Why does it say it's upcoming? I'm live. How many? 52? No, that doesn't work. Alright. Let's do boom. Boom. Actually, boom, boom. I'll do this. Okay, perfect. Test, test, 1, 2, 3. I'll do this. How does it say there's desktop audio? There's no desktop audio. Okay, there we go. Make sure Twitch is working. Make sure Twitch is working. Twitch works. Just gotta change the title. What's the title of the stream again? Boom. Boom. Rematch. Alright. Stream manager. Okay. Last thing is TikTok. But I'll go live on TikTok once we start. Because TikTok is a little harder to do. Let's make sure chat works. Yeah, YouTube chat doesn't really work. But that's okay. It takes forever for YouTube chat to work. I want to turn this off. I don't want to turn this off. I want to keep this on. But I'll turn it off for now. Then when I click settings, okay. Turn this on. And I go to Discord. There we go. All right, our guest for today. Let's Oh, I don't think I can. Oh, never mind. Yeah, I'll do it in a second. But yeah, games were fun. I guess it's nice to see Team Liquid really dominate. TikTok over here. What is it showing? Oh, I don't want display capture. I just want this. Ah, I see what's going on here. Okay. I want to turn this on. Like that. And then sometimes it's difficult to figure out how to stream because I'm a noob. Alright, I think we'll talk about the NRG games first. Actually, I'm gonna switch up the order of the show today. So let's go to text, property. I'm not changing the text every single time. Oh crap, didn't mean to do that. Yeah, TikTok management is a little too much. So I'll go to settings and I'll do disputing everything. Disputing everything. Perfect. Apply, turn on, put it right in the middle, and then once I get into call, I think it should look good. All right, just waiting on the guest. Yeah, the Team Liquid games. Honestly, I'm more excited about the Fnatic games. All right, ready when you are. All right, let's hop on the call. Boom. There we go. Oh crap. Hello?
Hello?
I just realized I did. This should work now. There we go.
There we go. I can see you. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm all right. Wife's got all her friends over. They're having a great old time. I've got my drink. I'm here with you, so it's all set up for a good, successful night.
Perfect. I have our names mixed up. I think I'm Cloud and you're Noxwar. I think so.
I think that's how it works. I'm pretty sure that's the correct name order.
It's hard sometimes, you know.
So many people to remember. I get it.
Did you get a chance to watch the games or not really?
I watched the first two. I did not catch the third just because we were out running errands really quick before the party started. But from my understanding, it was a bit of a stomp.
Yeah, you didn't miss much. You're good.
I kind of figured tomorrow's the real banger. Although yesterday kind of turned out more of a banger than I thought it would be.
Oh, dude, yesterday was a disaster, a banger, but like a disaster for NRG, a disaster for Dig, honestly. Like it's
Yeah, I mean, either way, 100 Thieves is probably feeling okay about the matchup with, I guess, spoiler alert, probably FlyQuest.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get into that.
We'll get into it. I won't give too much more than that, but that's my current prediction.
All right. You're probably a little loud. So, all right. I think
I can turn myself down a little bit,
I
or
can turn
okay.
you down from my side. When you're doing interviews for Riot, it's always there are 3 different rooms that they can put you in, and each room has a different
Mhm.
audio level balance, and it changes every single time you do it. So sometimes I'll go in there and it'll be like they'll be just I will be so loud that I can hear myself off of their microphone. Sometimes they'll be so loud that they can hear themselves, and sometimes it'll be like dead silent and they can't hear me or I can't hear them. So it is just constant adjusting. So for some
You,
reason, my audio mixer was like, I'm at like 20% and you're at 200. So
you get very used to adapting on the fly very quickly for audio, I assume.
yeah. And it never works out. I always have to go into Audacity and fix stuff up, but it's it is what it is. All right, I guess we'll get into. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you're only on YouTube, or you do it on Twitch too?
I'm YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok.
Okay, you're all 3 then. Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I'll probably be watching via YouTube because I feel like Twitch, for whatever reason, sucks up a lot of my internet.
I think Twitch just sucks in general, to be honest. But
yeah, fair, fair.
I feel like the past month it's gotten a lot worse. I used to watch streams right before going to bed. Like sometimes I watch like Surdy or Shading because they'd be on, and now it's just like it's always laggy. It's always like bad. I'm like, there's no way it's that bad, right?
You would figure, but sometimes you continue to be surprised by the limits of technology in 2024.
That's true. Well, I'm joined by Noxfor, who, as you can see from his jersey, is a huge FlyQuest hater. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
He's a
hater.
FlyQuest
I
fan.
hate FlyQuest.
I give him all my money. Yeah, a huge FlyQuest fan. He's joining the show for the first time, and yeah, we'll just get right into it. I specifically wanted him, pushed for him a little bit because we were going to talk about FlyQuest versus C9. But first, we're going to talk about yesterday, and yesterday was one hell of a game. We had NRG really like some of those players might find some difficulties signing on to teams. I'm gonna start with the positive though. Out of all the players in NRG, if you had to keep 2 and kick the rest, which 2 players would you kick, Noswar?
Which ones would I kick?
Well, which ones would you keep?
Or keep? Okay. I mean, either way, it's still hard. I think throughout the course of the year, Contracts has shown a level of stability and prowess in terms of his jungling. I think he's still been one of the better junglers in the league. Unfortunately, he's not hitting that elite level that he was hitting back in 2023 summer. But I think he's showed enough stability that he's someone that you can continue to build around and have a solid foundation for as a team. So I think Contracts is someone I think you need to keep. As for Dokla, Palafox, FBI, and Huhi, that gets very, very tough because I think all of them had various shining moments here and there. Even historically, right? But I think if you wanted someone to stay consistent, I think it has to be FBI. I think FBI is one of those 80 carries, like, you don't ever talk about him, at least this year you haven't talked about him. But at the same time, that's also a good thing, because you can talk about him in a good sense, and you can talk about him in a bad sense. You can be famous or you can be infamous, in which case, He just kind of flies under the radar. He does what he needs to do. You can go check on his stats in Oracle's Elixir or Gold.gg, whatever you want to check on. And for the most part, he's solid. He's there. He's reliable. And maybe if that's what you want to play around, you have a jungler who can sometimes flip things and be really aggressive, which is what he was doing for NRG this year. Unfortunately, his lanes weren't really able to support him in that sense. And then you get a stable AD carry that allows you to pick up like something, a very aggressive mid laner or a very aggressive top laner that can really be the punching points of your team going into 2025. So with all that said, if I only had two to pick from, I think I got to go FBI and contracts just due to the level of play that they displayed, as well as just in terms of roster building for next year and how they play historically.
So I'll give you the contracts point. I think we can both agree that contracts was the shining star, and contracts was doing a lot for that team. And sometimes it wouldn't work, but I think he
It
had the best
happens.
performance. It happens exactly. I'm gonna be known as the FBI hater at this point. I know I came on the very first episode of this show and said FBI is the reason NRG aren't hitting that next stride because he's just doing nothing in the games. Like you said, he's just like kind of there and doesn't do anything. But then I saw his solo lanes and I was like, man, I'm sorry. I tweeted it out publicly. I was like, FBI is not the problem. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. Like, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. But I will say the person I will keep is not FBI, it's actually Huhi, because Huhi makes things happen. And we saw that Huhi wasn't on the same page with the team. And from split one, from the beginning of spring of this year, they could not find a way to adapt to Huhi's playstyle within the NRG style. And like my guess is like we've seen both of them separately, and we've seen the NRG style like work and not work. But we've had years of 100 Thieves, of even Golden Guardians more recently, of Huhi and the type of leadership and shot calling. And if I want to keep one player, I'd rather have a shot caller and get a super mechanically proficient player. Another Masu if we can find, or even like a Surdy in the top lane. I feel like it's so much easier to put these other pieces when you have a leader and a shot caller. And I think if you keep FBI, then he's not as valuable in my opinion as the jungle support who already have synergy, and one of them being a leader and a shot caller. And you take him out of the system that NRG had, you put him back to being a leader like he was on Golden Guardians, and all of a sudden he's making these plays. He's synchronizing better with his players, and we see another miracle run. He's done a lot at this point. He's done two on Golden Guardians back in 2020 and then 2023, and obviously people didn't expect 100 Thieves to win, so he's proven.
Yeah, so I guess, and maybe you have a better idea because you actually get the chance to talk to players, you get to talk to coaches and stuff. So part of the reason why I did not have Huhi as the one that I would keep is because, from my understanding, Huhi is one of the biggest shot callers in the North American LCS. But so is Contracts. He's one of the leading voices of this team and how they want to play the game. And so, just as you were saying earlier, NRG had a lot of issues, especially in spring. They got a little better towards the end of summer, but especially in spring, they had a lot of issues like coordinating how they wanted to play the game, what they wanted to do. There was a notorious like interview from Palafox with Travis Gafford about how like we're just constantly fighting. We cannot get onto the same page of how we want to play the game, and that did not happen until Huhi joined this team after Ignar had left. So part of me was like, is that the reason why this NRG team is struggling so much? Outside of obviously the solo lane is really struggling. Like that's just blatant and obvious. And that was kind of why I had just a little bit of doubt about keeping Huhi, because I don't know if I'm keeping Contracts, which I feel like Contracts is, in my opinion, more valuable than Huhi. Maybe that's a debate you and I can have. But if you're keeping Contracts, I don't know if I necessarily want to keep Huhi with Contracts, because I don't know if they mesh well in terms of gameplay style and how they want to actually push the game forward.
I think early game it's mainly contracts, but then when it comes to these mid games, especially with like the solo laners having to decide which side lane, it's actually more of a democratic, or like there are a lot of different people, and this is something I've asked
Mm-hmm.
multiple other players to kind of figure out. And it's who he is used to being the shot caller. Like when I say go, we go, and the idea of like, oh, we all come up with a plan together and we're all feeding information. Like Palafox wants to do A, Dokla wants to do B, Contracts wants to do C, you want to do D. Let's figure out what we can do, instead of someone gave us a plan, we're going with it. And I have a feeling this obviously I haven't seen any scrims, but my estimation is if you just get rid of people who are making calls who aren't playing well, and you keep the person who historically has played well and made calls, then you don't have those problems. And having two shot callers is a lot better than having four or five, you know?
No, I agree. I guess long story short, if I were a GM and I had all the knowledge behind the scenes, if it comes down to that contracts and who he can get on the same page and are aligned on how they want to play the game, then it's probably those two that I want to keep. If who he cannot get on the same page as contracts, or contracts cannot get on the same page as who he, I personally value contracts more than who he, so I would just choose, if based off the scenario of the question of keeping only two, I would elect to keep FBI over who he.
I think
If that makes sense.
yeah, I think you can replace FBI much more easily than you can replace Huhi, especially with a weak support pool. Like if you think of your
Right.
top 380 carries, you think of your top three top laners, like they're kind of obvious. Our jungle pool is pretty deep as well. You go to support and you're like, well, that third spot, it could be Ole, but he finished last. It could be like, is it Vulcan and Busio? Like surely Busio had some stinker games. Maybe you could put some. So I just think that support and the shot calling aspect. I think once, like I said, historically, just looking at the team, NRG had one split where they had a good run, where everything was clicking. It wasn't even a split. It was literally just like the second half of playoffs, not even the first. They lost 0-3 to Cloud9 in the upper bracket, although they did win the first match. So there's that. But yeah, they meshed with a specific meta where their solo laners were able to play the champions, and therefore when they had the leads, they were able to make those calls. And then you bring in a shot caller, and they're trying to make the calls of old. It just doesn't mesh very well. That's just my guess, my guesstimation of what's going on. I
Yeah,
didn't write
fair,
this
fair.
down, but the two solo laners who got a lot of flame were Palafox and Dokla. And I'm putting you on the spot here. Keep or kick? Which one do you keep? Which one do you pick between Palafox and Dokla?
I'm personally, and this is a little bit of bias, but Pal has been my boy since 2021. I really do think. So before I get off on this little tangent, do you know if NRG has like a sports psychologist or anything?
From what I understand, not anymore, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Get my boy a sports psychologist. Get him out of his own damn head. He's just got to get this tilt like taken care of. He needs to become level again. Whatever you got to do. I really do think if you have this man in an actual decent mental state and in a team that can help support him and get him going, I really do think he could be one of the best mid laners again, like he was back in 2023. So for me, like I thought Dokla had some great moments back in 2023 as well, but I there was something special and magical I thought that Palafox was able to display last year, and he hasn't been able to recapture it. And I think if you get him in a situation or in a mindset where he's able to do those things again, he will absolutely be one of the best mids in the LCS once more. So I value Palafox a little more than Dokla. Maybe you can contest me on that though. Maybe I'm missing something about Dokla that I'm not thinking about.
I think you're just a little bit biased towards Palafox.
I'm not denying it. I'm not denying it.
the level of just like int that we've seen from him this entire year, like
it's
his
been
highs
rough.
were definitely higher than Dokla's, but his lows, his floor, my god, like dude, honestly, I was yelling, I was screaming when he played that Azir game. Like just shifting in, that was like what Faker did. And when Faker did that, he was like smashing his head onto the wall, or not smashing, but he was like very frustrated,
bonking his head.
And we've seen like Palafox play so poorly for so long. We saw him in spring against Dove of all people, who's not even starting in the LCS. He gets like almost solo killed, goes back, bases, TPs, literally stands still, gets like 75% of his HP done, and then he's like, oh, what do I do now? My lane's over. It's like, what are you doing on champions that he's supposed to carry on? Like the level of like when you see a player drop this much, you have to have like a discussion. It's very difficult to keep him. Dokla, we've seen is up and down. Obviously, he had a play that's going to be called the Dokla, where you flash ulti Zanya's like and completely lose the series and get your team kicked out of playoffs. Like that was egregious. But overall, he's had like a lower level. He's had very bad Rumble games, but we've seen like more positives out of Dokla and less negatives, despite both of them having negatives. It's just you can't get around like the level of play that Palafox has shown in the past year. If it was one split, if it was after a split, I'd say definitely take Palafox. But the fact that we've seen this for two splits and it got worse. You know, like there was like one game where he looked a little bit better, a little bit more confident, and then it went it's just it's
Yeah. Either way, at the end of the day, neither are playing at a level that are deserving of LCS. I just, if I were a GM, I'm more willing to bet on the guy that if I give proper resources to get out of his own head, I'm taking the guy that has the higher ceiling. That's just me personally. I don't think Dokla has a higher ceiling than Palafox. Granted, the floor was way lower with Palafox, but that's a risk that I'm willing to take.
but you haven't seen any like you've seen it once and then you've seen a year of abysmal play, you know? So like I said, if it was one split where he was having a slump, I'd say sure. But the fact that this slump has just carried on and gotten worse and worse, like careers of professional League of Legends players are so short. Like sure they're getting longer with people like Core DJ and Impact and whatnot, but like overall, they're getting shorter. We've seen Mike Young. He came, he had one good split, he played another year, like he didn't even finish the year, moved on from him. There are all these players that people don't even remember their names because at the end of the day, like if you're not performing now, even if you have super high highs like someone like Dardoch or someone like Eminence, if your personality or there's something about you that is holding you back, like you don't get more shots. And I struggle
So
to justify paying a salary to someone, paying all this money for someone who just like threw away a lot of the year.
So let me counter you with one other person that we're debating picking between, but Dokla literally got demoted back down to NACL or Academy at the time frame, and then eventually years later made his comeback, had one of the best years ever, made it to Worlds, made it to quarterfinals. It's possible for it to happen, and I think it could happen to Palafox as well.
Yeah, send
I
him to
think he's
Academy
good
and
enough
then
that yeah.
send him to NACL
Again,
and then
I'm not arguing to keep him right now. I'm saying that if I had to pick between the two, I have a higher trust rate, or however you want to phrase it. I have a higher trust for Palafox to bounce back and get back to that high level of ceiling than Dokla does, who's not going to provide me that level of ceiling, where I can just import someone else. I can pick up Surdy. There's other top laners. I can pick up Zamudo here in a little bit because he's been looking decent on Dragonsteel. There's options, I think. Mid lane's still a little bit sketchy, but yeah, and yes, you could still import any mid laner that you wanted. But my point stands that I think Palafox could bounce back. I think he's got the right grind set mindset. He just has to get out of the wrong mindset of actual play level.
yeah, you're not gonna convince me with that one, but
Fair. Either way, like I said, neither is deserving of playing in LCS next year. I don't think. I think either you'll get replaced by imports. You'll have I hope to God Spirax gets in, or you'll have some import come in, or Zamudo will come in, Surdy will come in. Both of these guys, there's no reason for them at their current level of play to stay in the LCS. So it is what it is, and it's very unfortunate because, like I said, I've always been a Palafox fanboy. Ever since he joined FlyQuest, I think he was done dirty on that team, unfortunately, due to reasons outside of his control that he's talked about on Hotline League and so on and so forth. But I will always be a fan of his.
yeah, I agree. I think that FlyQuest team, everyone was done dirty. That FlyQuest team was
Yeah,
a
it
mess.
was. We don't have to get into it, but it was.
Yeah, now are the good years. You know, like the past couple years,
Yes.
overall, I think they've been a lot better. Um, Speaking of deserving, All Pro was announced, and the first team was all of Team Liquid except for Umti. Umti didn't even make it the second All Pro. He made it to third All Pro. Do you think that's deserved?
Deserved is a strong word. I don't think he deserved third, but do I think it makes sense? Yes, because I also put him in third in my personal ballot. Not that I submit to Riot or anything, just whenever I make him, that he was my third All Pro jungler. Um, is he like, if we were to do like S, A, B, C, D tier rankings, he's still on the same tier as Inspired and Blabber, in my opinion. He is that caliber. Whether you think it's S rank, A rank, I mean, obviously our scales differ, but he's on the same tier as Inspired and Blabber, and I will always argue for that. So I think in the reality of the situation is the way Team Liquid plays and how good their laners are, it makes Umti's life extremely easy. He doesn't have a lot of adversity that he has to deal with in the games. He's not really having to pull things out of his butt to make sure that TL gets wins. It's because his teammates are good. He does a very great job of accelerating the team to win and making sure that they continue to find success. But compared to Inspired and Blabber, where you have JoJo slumping a little bit in the mid lane, you have like silly moments from Thanatos where he's out of sync, or for Inspired where the bot lane's kind of losing their 2v2s because they're not very good at them, to be honest, and you have Whippo inting sometimes. These junglers are having to do a little bit more work to make sure that their teams find victories. And so for that reason alone, I put a little bit more emphasis on Blabber and Inspired in terms of all pro compared to Umti. It's not really fair. It's taking into consideration of the whole team, but that's just how I think about it.
Yeah, just because you have worse tools shouldn't mean you're not as sharp as all the other tools. So yes, all of the Team Liquid laners are better than their counterparts. Impact is top. Like I think all four of them were better. But then when you look at Umti, and he's not only driving like accelerating leads, he is always there at the right time. Whenever they're getting ganked, he's there for a counter gank. Whenever there's an objective, he is positioning himself so that his carries can do their job. And at the end of the day, like, would I prefer a jungler who has to take everything in their hands, or would I prefer someone who doesn't do that and actually just plays to the team? The thing with Inspired, we've seen it. Like when he has to take things into his own hands, sometimes he ints. Sometimes maybe he should have played a little bit, more safe. Sometimes he should have had some more patience. Blabber, same thing. Sometimes he just goes ham because he feels there's pressure. And when you have a player who, again, he's very. It's not like Umti is not aggressive. He is aggressive, but he's able to taper that aggressiveness to take the right fights. You know, the level of baiting that he's showing. There was that against NRG when there was like they got like a 4-man Rel engage on like a 5-man Ezreal ult, and like it was just so perfectly played in Sejuani Ultimate. He's constantly thinking about positioning. The reason they have good macro isn't just because, hey, it's just, good players. He's part of that macro. He's always at the right place at the right time. And just because he's not, all bronze and he has a lot of brains, I don't think means you're any less sharp as a tool. I actually think you should value that a little bit more, because aggressiveness isn't that difficult to come around. We've seen a lot of aggressive players. We've seen Kemvi come into the LCS and look like a potato, right? And that was Immortals, so I'll give that to Kemvi. But again, you see aggressive players come into the LCS, play aggressively, and not get leads, not win. We've seen Umti play Viego. He got a pentakill on Viego in like lower bracket finals, if I'm not mistaken, last split. So it's not like he doesn't have it. It's just he identifies what he needs to do, when he needs to do it, and he does it well. And I think just because that's not flashy, that's not carrying your teammates, doesn't make you any less more deserving of first ult pro.
Right. And like I said, all three of these junglers are on the same tier. I personally just value, because he pushes the leads forward, but I value if you're any player, this could be mid, top, bot, support, it doesn't matter. Any player who is going above and beyond to ensure wins for your team is going to have a little higher value than just being able to continue to push leads for your team. That does lead to victories. So in like Inspired and Blabber's case, I think if you put, actually, you know what? I am going to go with this analogy. I think if you put Umti or on either FlyQuest or Team Liquid, I don't think they have as a successful season. I think they do a lot more work for their respective teams because of how they play and their play styles. Like Inspired's playstyle and his idea of how he wants to jungle is what enables FlyQuest to find wins. I don't think it's quite the same, because Umti is a little bit more balanced between farming and like wanting to gank lanes and push leads forward. And FlyQuest has their whole drive around the mindset of just be stable, let Inspired farm up, and then when we hit mid game, then we can actually push together as a team. And then Cloud9, on the other hand, Blabber, a little bit more gank heavy, a lot of presence in the mid lane. If I remember correctly, JoJo has the #1 jungle presence in the league. He has a lot of lane attention, and it's for that reason that Cloud9 still has ability to find success, because he allows JoJo, who's in my opinion not playing as well right now, to still get into the mid game and still have a lot of resources and a lot of farm and a lot of power to be able to push fights forward. I don't think Umti has the right skill set and mindset, or not mindset, sorry, wrong. He has the wrong skill sets to make those teams succeed. I think he works on Team Liquid, but he's not going to help provide more wins for the FlyQuest and Cloud9, whereas Inspired does for FlyQuest and Blabber does for Cloud9, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but then that's just roster construction. You could make that argument for Inspired as well. If you put Inspired on the team that's the bloodiest team in the league, and at some point the bloodiest team in the world, he's not going to find that same success. Same thing with Blabber. If you just put a farming jungler who's pressuring mid lane all the time on a team where their carries are like their mid laner is not the focus of attention, it's their top and bottom lane, then again, it's not going to work. Who do you think has better mechanics, Masu or Yon? Like a mechanically fighting, who would you give it to?
Masu.
I would too. Now imagine you had Umti, who's extra aggressive and wants to push those leads, wants to get that extra edge, and is fighting more often. Don't you think that would give Masu more opportunity to shine in these team fights than the one, like half an item to one item? I think you could make the argument that putting someone, Umti, how he was praying in spring, because that's how he needed to, right? I think here's the thing with Umti is that he can be the salt and he can be the pepper. He can be the more farming, like waiting. He can be the more aggressive, like, okay, now we're going.
He's the balance of the three.
Exactly, and I think he'll actually. I think that's a point in my defense is that he's able to adapt into all this. I think he could do a very good job at just playing around his bottom lane or playing around JoJo. I mean, any jungler that plays with JoJo has to play around JoJo because JoJo breaks the game with the way he plays.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of a JoJo kind of thing rather than a Blabber, because Blabber without JoJo Pyun was a very high efficiency farming jungler who knew where he needed to be at the right times. Not as obviously like Inspired. Inspired is more of like I will take things into my own hands, or I know my position. That's another thing I dislike about Inspired. Like when it's a carry meta and Inspired is carrying in the jungle, people are like, oh, he just plays selfishly. But then like look at back when he was playing on EG. And he was providing so much to Danny. He was just giving Danny and JoJo all the time and space, and he was playing that supportive style. It's just, I think they're all adaptable. I would just say that we've seen more from Umti just in this year, and in the split, maybe not as much because he's really not played those AP carries just because they didn't need to. But at least over the entire year that we've seen him play, he has that capability.
No, all three of them have the capability. The way I will put it is, I think Inspired, because it sounds like you're underselling Inspired a little bit. Because he really, like, if you watch a lot of the team fights in the mid game, late game, he buys a lot of room and he buys a lot of space. He's also the main shot caller for FlyQuest, and it's kind of stuff that I also take into considerations when it comes to my All Pro, because I think if you put Umti on this team, like, I know Umti does shot call, but
he runs their
I think he's
completely.
Yeah, but Inspired runs the whole thing. That's the difference. Inspired runs it early game, mid game, late game. It is all him at all times. Like, everyone feeds information to him, but he is the shot caller. And for me, that also puts a little bit more emphasis on Inspired because he's putting more work in. He's really thinking about the game at all aspects at all times. He's considering where his bot lane is. He's considering where Bwitbo's doing. He's considering how Quad's doing. Although I will say Quad has made his life a lot easier because Quad plays for him a crap ton. He plays for him an absolute crap ton. He like takes bad trades even so that Inspired can get crab. So that, I mean, I will give a little bit of a leeway on that one because I don't think any other mid laner does that for like Umti or Blabber. It's always them playing for their mid laner. So, but all that said, I put a lot of focus on Inspired being the second because I voted. I don't know what your ranking was. Did you actually put Umti first, or is this just the argument that you were making? Out of curiosity.
It's just I actually put Inspired, Umti, Blabber.
Okay. So I had Inspired second. I had Blabber first. And the reason why I had Inspired second was just because I really do think what he got assists from Quad to be able to do the pathing that he wants to do. But on top of that, he's still able to coordinate the team at all aspects of the game, early, mid, and late. He's calling team fights. He's telling people what to do in the team fights, as shown in like even the clip from last week where he's telling Busio like, you need to go in. You need to go in. I think like he's literally microing people at times, even in the middle of team fights. So that's why I put him there. And then along with that, I think Blabber just does a little bit more to push the team forward. He's like the most aggressive, like I said. So you have Umti, who's the 50-50. You have Inspired, who's a little bit more reserved, but is macroing everyone through comms. And then I think you have Blabber, who's willing to really push leads forward the most, and he's really trying to flip stuff, and he's putting jungle presence in the mid lane so JoJo can actually be relevant at all times. It comes down to just all those factors that I have him ranked the way I do. And I just, again, Umti's good. He's in the same tier. It's how it looked to me in game was who was putting more work in. And you can't even really see it Inspired all that much, but I think because, hey, guess what? I'm the FlyQuest guy. I pay a little bit more attention to what Inspired is saying in comms. I hear a little stuff from like staff sometimes about what he's doing in game. I hear stuff from the coaches occasionally. So I may have a little bit more insight than most people in that regard. So I put him there, but at least I still have to take into consideration the things I see on Summoner's Rift. And I think Blabber does a lot more, puts a lot more in to push games forward to find victories for Cloud9, even though his team is not as good as, say, Umti's.
Is that the Chengdu China FlyQuest jersey?
No, this is 2023. This was the very first jersey that.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the branches, and this is the very first one that Carlybot did after Fiend left for Cloud9. So this was 2023.
I need to get myself a jersey. If Shopify had not joined the LCS, I would be a FlyQuest fan. Funny story, but I'm a fan of some of the people that they brought in. I wasn't a fan that they let go of Leota. I'll say that, but things happen.
Yeah.
Especially like Sharks, Leota. Actually, it's funny because when I first talked to them, I was saying like I know them from you guys. I've watched your thing for so long. I just always watch the VOD because I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big Twitch user, and you guys never stream on YouTube. You guys only stream on
most people catch our VOD, so it's all good. We just happen if anyone wants to watch live.
Yeah, so it was very cool to talk to Sharks, and then I mentioned he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna miss the flag crew," because he had just joined Immortals. He was like, "I'm gonna miss the flight tech crew." So what you guys have done for FlyQuest has been really cool, and I'll make sure to put all your like links and stuff in the bio.
Thank you.
We had, I think 100 Thieves had like a group of people that were doing what you guys were
doing. 100 Talk Pod with Cole and Jordan. I'm still friends with those guys. I talk to them all the time, and I would say, even though I've only met them once, we're good friends.
Yeah, but I think they stopped. Was it like 2 years ago now? I don't know. It's been a while.
Beginning of summer last year. Their last pod was spring of 2023.
Okay, yeah. So a year and a half. So it's cool to see you guys keep going at it. And that brings us to FlyQuest versus C9. Who do you have winning? And what score?
I gotta take this jersey off for a second. I'm very sorry to my own team, but at the end of the day, I've always been extremely realistic about how I think FlyQuest will do, and that goes for any team. But I do think Cloud9 is performing at a higher level than FlyQuest is currently. I think FlyQuest currently has some issues with Bwipo's resources and champion picks and draft. Just some of the choices I think Bwipo has been making lately has been stuff that can absolutely flip games in his favor and FlyQuest's favor. But as of this summer, I don't believe he's been flipping heads. He's been flipping mainly tails. The Volibear game, for instance, against NRG last week. There's been a couple other picks. The Nautilus, for instance, I think also against Cloud9 in week 7. Things of that sort, right? Where it's just he understands the game at such a high level, and he understands where he's messing up at, but he's not able to apply it like he was in spring. I thought in spring he was like understanding the errors that he was making, and then he would fix it the next game, and he would continue to push his lead. And I just haven't seen it this summer. I will also say, along with that, I'm a little worried about the fact that Busio and Masu have been flipping the lane or doing lane swaps so often. It gives them a free path to just get farm and gold and so on and so forth, and really kind of push the game to the mid game without having any like 2-on-2 fighting. And I think there's a reason for that, because a lot of the times that they get into the 2v2s, they've been losing the 2v2s. They often get killed, or even 2v2 killed, or like both of them die. And that's been very frustrating to see, because like they're both great mechanically. So it's like, why do they keep losing lane? And so I'm worried as the playoffs go on and as Worlds hits, because I do expect them to still make Worlds. they're going to be forced into positions where they do have to do 2v2 lanes, or standard laning, I should say. And they're going to continue to get punished because they are not great laners. And so I really need to see Masu and Busio step up in terms of their laning phase, so that way when mid and late game comes around, they're not far behind. They have the punching power that they can put in, and they can actually win these team fights, because Masu is that guy. He's great. He's awesome. He can punch anyone that he needs to in the middle of a team fight and find victory for FlyQuest on that route. But he does have to have the resources for that, which is why, again, they're doing lane swaps and so on and so forth, accelerating the game for that aspect and whatnot. But if they're not being given the opportunity to do that, I don't think they're going to find that level of success.
When C9 were playing FlyQuest, I predicted C9 2-0, C9 1-2-0. And that made me very confident afterwards that FlyQuest is taking this win because of how it happened. I always talk about this.
Okay.
I always talk about this. When you have Jojopyun on your team, he breaks the game through his laning, right? If you don't pour in resources, I still remember this game when they lost to Immortals. Mask was the matchup doesn't really matter, but Armeo was playing Ivern, and he just kept coming into the lane, shielding Mask. Mask goes in for a trade, loses 0 HP, and then Jojo can't do anything because he has a bush and a shielded opponent, and he's like, he can't do anything. And he got solo killed by Quad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, he wasn't it. And when you take the strongest point, in my opinion, of this C9 roster is Jojopyun. It should be Jojopyun.
It should be. I don't think it is right now, though.
Yeah, when it isn't, I feel like, how does Cloud9 win? Like, just get more leads? Like, FlyQuest showed us that they can get leads against C9. We've seen it happen twice. Yeah, sure, they made some mistakes, but again, a best of 5, the intensity that comes with it, the more, like, the focus, the experience, all of that matters. And I just think that Inspired has shown up time and time again. Bwipo against Thanatos, I don't think Thanatos was able to, like, Thanatos looked dizzy against FlyQuest, because believe it or not, I actually think FlyQuest have, if not better, like the same or better lane swaps than Team Liquid. Often I look at their lane swaps and I'm like, man, they're always getting like better leads. Team Liquid have better laners.
They are clean. They're clean with it.
Yeah,
sure.
So I think you make their rookie top laner dizzy because he can't keep up. We've seen a lot of different type of lane swap. We saw a lane swap where the top laner and AD carry were the ones that were getting resources, and the support was the one that was level 1 for 4 minutes. We've seen today with Team Liquid, they had a different type of lane swap. Like, we're seeing all these different types of lane swaps, and I don't think you're going to bring in Thanatos. And if you already look dizzy back in week 6, you give him 2-3 weeks with more different types of lane swap, I don't think he's going to catch up. And so you already have, like, I'm not worried about Bwipo like I was when he was playing against, NRG, for example, with someone who's he's someone who's like consistently flips heads or tails, but I think once he's playing against someone who cannot push his lead, he's not playing against an Impact, he's not playing against, in the past, or some Alfari, we had like really good top laners that could challenge him. He doesn't like crash and burn very often. Sure, he had the Volibear game. I understand. Like, I asked him about that, and he was like, it was a miscommunication. I didn't want to go in, but the call was to go in, so I went in, and then I realized, oh snap, I died, and then just game snowballed because they camped me, And like, yes, the Nautilus game, he kind of ints that. Again, I have more faith that they're going to fix their mistakes because I've seen FlyQuest improve. Like, look at week 1 FlyQuest, and look at week 7 FlyQuest, and then look at week 1 Cloud9, and look at week 7 Cloud9. And you can see that FlyQuest has a much steeper learning curve. Like, they're improving more than what I've seen Cloud9 do. And so that gives me more confidence in them that Quad is playing a lot better. Masu can go head to head. And again, if Busio is like inting these lanes like he did against, Shopify, or against, I think, Cloud9 a little bit, like, you can just make them dizzy. Like, what are they going to do,
So, and this is why, so I put Cloud9 3-2. I think this is going to Silver Scrapes. I think this will be extremely close. I think the win conditions for FlyQuest are get your lane swaps off, allow Inspire to do the proper jungle pathing, don't let Blabber initiate any flips or in any way, shape, or form, especially into the top side. If you can do all of that, I think FlyQuest can find the win. But I think Cloud9 is smart enough to understand that those are the win conditions and are going to do their best to make sure that they put FlyQuest into positions where they don't get those options. They're going to have Blabber really forcing lanes. They're going to be constantly in Quad's lane, not letting Quad get solo kills on JoJo, which is still insane to me. Stuff of that sort, right? I think in general that if Cloud9, because it's not a matter of Cloud9 finding their win conditions, I really do think it's a matter of denying FlyQuest theirs. And I think Cloud9's good enough to deny FlyQuest enough times to win the best of 5.
What are
And
FlyQuest
that's
win
kind of what my
conditions?
prediction is. I think proper lane swaps, getting Masu and Busio into the mid to late game so that way Masu has enough carry potential. I do think you have to let Inspired get proper farm and jungle pathing to get either objectives in the dragons or the grubs, because that's pretty much how Inspired always plays. He has to either by 15 minutes have 2 drakes, or he needs to at least have 4 out of the 6 grubs at all times. That's just how he always plays. He's going to trade. He's not going to fight you in the early game unless like there's some massive like map side advantage where you would just have you outnumber them for whatever reason. Like he's not going to fight you otherwise. So he will always trade. He will always have some form of objective advantage in that sense. If Blabber's not allowing that because he's pushing lanes, or if he's really invading early because his lanes have good pressure, because JoJo's still a great laner. Go look at his stats. He's still best laner in the whole league outside of stupid mistakes that he's been making later on. All that allows Blabber to be extremely aggressive and can be very disruptive, which is why I think Cloud9 still has FlyQuest's number, because it's very counteractive to what Inspired wants to do in the game. Inspired wants to be able to farm, jungle path, set up the objectives, get just a wallet diff for the team in general, so that way when you hit mid to late game, teams can take any fights that they want, and any mistakes that do get made, it's pretty recoverable because they have a little bit of a wallet diff. I think Cloud9's great at making sure that teams aren't able to do that because of how aggressive Blabber plays in the other team's jungle or pushing lanes in certain aspects. And that is just not how FlyQuest wants to play. FlyQuest needs stability. They need consistency. Cloud9 thrives in the ability to create chaos and making sure that no one's really comfortable in how they're playing. And so I think Cloud9's a little bit better at creating chaos than FlyQuest is at creating stability, because Whippo is not great at staying stable himself. And if the bot lane's in a 2v2, I don't think they're extremely stable either.
The 2 games that we've seen FlyQuest play against Cloud9, the Cloud9 win con of let's have a wallet diff by 15 minutes were actually in FlyQuest's favor. So I feel like all FlyQuest need to do is just keep playing your game, because Cloud9 don't have enough tools to break you. You broke yourself both games. So don't break yourself and you'll be fine. I think it's so much easier to fix your own mistakes and keep playing. I just think it's a stylistic difference. I think Cloud9 might have a better style to play against Team Liquid, just because Team Liquid are aggressive and Cloud9 are aggressive. And then you put hands diff versus hands diff, and you can get some really bloody games. You can see game 1, Cloud9 wins. Game 2, like it was very close. Game 3 was like in 20 minutes, it was like even gold, even kills. Like I think these teams
terrible draft.
Yeah, that draft was another thing. But like when you look at FlyQuest against Cloud9, I just think they have the stylistic matchup in their favor, because they're the stability. Cloud9 are the sword. They're the shield. And we've seen twice that sword is not strong enough. It's just Cloud9 FlyQuest have to make sure not to let go of their shield. So I just think it's easier in FlyQuest.
I don't have the faith. I just don't have the faith, because I don't think they're stable enough. I think there will be a mistake somewhere, and Cloud9's good enough to capitalize on it. You are absolutely correct. I agree with you that if they play how they should, if like Blippo's playing how he was in spring, if Quad's been playing how he has been the whole split, Inspired stays how he's been playing, and then there's no bot lane shenanigans and 2v2s or anything like that, FlyQuest 3-0s this straight up. But the thing is, they're not that stable. They're not that consistent. And because Cloud9 has this ability to create a little bit of chaos, force FlyQuest into positions that they're not comfortable in, that's where they find their wins. So, and that's why, again, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of trading of games this series. I think it's going to be a 3-2 in favor of Cloud9.
I'm actually giving it a 3-1. I think it's going to happen what happened with NRG. You're going to have a game where Brippo is on Renekton, and all of a sudden it looks like late game Renekton apparently scales. I don't know if you watched the interview I did with Brippo, but he was like, how many people think that Renekton scales? Well, with the items that are in and the way he plays, my Renekton scales. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of did. You like did nothing for 30 minutes, got 3 items, and then just like 1v9. And he was like,
you dive the bot side and then or the back line, and they're dead. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have 3 items and you've been farming. You have a bounty just from farm. Like you're not playing it for the early game. He plays champions differently, and I think the same is going to happen. He's going to have a stinker. He's going to have a Volibear game. Cloud9 are going to take a game. But at the end of the day, I think there's just enough structure. They also have a much bigger coaching staff, which is something that I highly value. Not just useless coaching staff, but like when you look at the names, you have Demonte, who is kind of sort of a performance coach at this point, right? He's like
Yep. Yeah.
he talked about like he's not a whatever. We'll just call him a performance coach for now. They have Mithy, who's strategic, who like is the strategic coach. I think he brings a lot of very smart, additions. They have their head coach Nukduk, who's clearly shown that he's good with what they're doing. And then they have I don't know how much Empire is doing in terms of scouting or whatnot, but I do know they have Arrow, who's working with the bottom lane, like a highly experienced person who can watch the other opponent, who can do his own scouting for the team and say, hey, like this is how we stay stable against this bottom lane of Vulcan and Berserker. They just have all of this support. And then you look at Cloud9, and they have Reaper, and they have someone who's working remotely in Vagar V2, and then you have kind of sort of High, who I think took a back foot, if I'm not mistaken, but he was coaching for like.
He's still listed as assistant coach. I don't know the
I think
exact.
in the beginning he wasn't a coach, and then he started becoming a coach a little bit, and I think he moved back. Like I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure of FlyQuest's coaching staff. I think FlyQuest just have more resources to put into a best of 5 than Cloud9 do, just by factor of like not having enough people to prep.
Yeah. So with that said, FlyQuest has the higher ceiling than Cloud9 does. They easily can eclipse Cloud9 in terms of potential. It's just a question of whether they can or not.
I also don't like the style that Cloud9 is playing, where in the mid game they look lost. And for me, that's just where is your leadership? Where is Blabber, who has played for 6 years now and can tell you, hey, when mid game comes, this is how we want to set up our Baron. This is how we want to set up ABC. Like at some point, these basic fundamentals, you need to have these drilled down. If you've been playing for years and years, like you can't keep relying on someone like Perks or Niski to lead the game to do this kind of stuff. You're a jungler. You're in prime position. You're not laning against opponents. Obviously, you're thinking about the jungle and whatnot, but you're constantly F-keying. You're thinking about what moves to make, the early game. Like, you need to run more than just the early game. We need to see you have solid structure in the mid to late game. And as of now, I haven't seen that. Whereas Inspired has been doing this. Like, Inspired is fresher than, at least in professional play, he's more fresh than Blabber. And yet he's not just a shot call, he's a leader. He's the like de facto leader. So I have more confidence in FlyQuest because of I think they're going to do better prep because they have more. They also have more options. Like look at Thanatos and his champ pool, and then look at Bwipo and his champ pool. Right? I think there's something to be said about having these pocket picks. About APA used to have his Ziggs and Asol, and like if you didn't ban it, he would just like win the game because he was so good at those champions. Bwipo has those kind of things. Bwipo not only plays different champions, he plays the same champion very differently. He plays the Volibear like in a way where he wants to scale on Volibear. Like obviously it didn't work this time, but if you look at what he does with his Olaf, for example, we've seen him time and time again do nothing in the early game with a super powerful Olaf. And then like once he gets three items, he's just like unkillable. He just like runs into the team and completely demolishes. He plays these matchups differently. We were actually in the interview that I did with him last week. We're talking about Ornn, and I knew that he had like a plus 60%. I think I looked it up eventually. It was like 67% or something crazy like that win rate on Ornn. And he was saying, I often choose to play this counter pick, like self counter in Ornn into Gnar, because I just think that I can offer more with the way that I play this matchup. And how other people play the matchup, you don't get those advantages as an Ornn, and yet I do it. And so I do think that there are just more tools, more people working in the background, and more upside for this FlyQuest team that it just pains me to have to vote against them because they lost so recently to Cloud9. And both losses inspire less confidence in Cloud9 and more disappointment in FlyQuest. If it was Cloud9 just like dominated from minute 1 to minute 30, like what Team Liquid just did to 100 Thieves, which we'll get to, I know, but it was a quick 3-0. Like if it was like that, I would be like, oh yeah. But even Inspired was like, yeah, I was worried playing against Cloud9. They're like really good in scrims, and then I saw them on stage and like, we lost, but like, I'm kind of confident now. Like this team didn't do what I thought they would do. And so it's the same thing. Even though they lost, I'm just more confident in FlyQuest now. And I did ask Core JJ, who does he think is going to win? I didn't ask him the serious score, but who do you think he predicted between FlyQuest and Cloud9?
Did he say FlyQuest?
No, he said Cloud9.
Okay. Okay, you got me on that one.
He said Cloud9, but I think he's
It's
wrong.
like there's no way he said FlyQuest. Okay.
Planets is not
Uh,
really liking Whipple's volley and Nautilus, but I think
no,
yeah. Go ahead.
Planets is yeah, I know Planets, and I know he's not a Bwipo fan, so which is understandable. I get it. I do. I really, really do. So long story short, I think yeah, I think stylistically, if FlyQuest actually plays to the potential and they hit their ceiling, this is a FlyQuest win. However, the reality of the situation is I don't think they're playing at their ceiling. I don't think they will play at their ceiling. And because of that, Cloud9 will be able to punish them and end up taking the series. And I said 3-2. You're saying Cloud9 3-1, correct?
Yes. No.
Okay.
FlyQuest 3-1.
Oh, you're saying FlyQuest 3-1. Wow. Okay. I need your faith, man. Are you sure you're a Shopify fan? I think you should come over to this side.
No, I told you. If Shopify had not joined the league, I would be a FlyQuest fan. What FlyQuest is doing in the LCS is what I want teams to be doing in the LCS, and I think Shopify are suited a little bit better. I have had public disagreement. Like I've talked to them about how they're approaching it, and in general, if you look at what they did with other titles, they really care. Like again, Shopify is an organization that happened to have an esports team because they're doing it as a marketing arm, right? It's not like
Right.
FlyQuest, a Cloud9, where you are an esports organization trying to survive. It is very, very different, and I prefer what Shopify is doing. But then when you look at what FlyQuest is doing, like they used to have Ovly. I think they not mistreated her, but they used her
poorly. They used
yeah,
her poorly.
poorly. They used her poorly.
Yes.
I did ask about why like certain usages of people like LS and Ovly, and I heard that there was like some actual reasons between contracts and whatnot. So I don't want to go into that detail, but at least what they're doing with Basil, I love what they're doing with Basil. You know, their merch is too expensive for me to buy, but like I love the fact that they're doing all these like different things. I think they could be doing more.
I'm just saying, if you join our pick'ems, I give out a jersey every split.
Oh, all right. I gotta join the
so if you start playing the pick'ems, you get a chance at a jersey. I've given out well over 15 jerseys over my time as being a FlyQuest fan. So
I've heard you talk about it, but I very rarely are my pick'ems. Actually, sometimes they're right. Maybe next split. Yeah.
It really depends. Sometimes people have like really good splits, and sometimes people have really bad splits. I've had multiple splits where I've been in the bottom half of the pick'ems. I've had, at least recently, I've been on a bit of a streak. I've finished top 5 in the past 4 pick'ems that I've done.
Oh,
so
nice.
You never know. And I mean, it's still hard. We've only had, I think, because I do one for each split. I do one for Worlds. I do one for MSI. So every tournament, I've done somewhere around like 30 something pick'ems since like 2021, and we've only had 6 like repeat winners. So it is a little hard to win, but take your shot, man. You get to enter for free, and you get a free jersey if you win.
All right, I'll definitely join the next one.
That's a little advertisement for everyone who follows Cloud. Join the FlyQuest Discord, and you could participate in LCS pick'ems, Worlds pick'ems, and we do give out jerseys for free if you are the winner.
Yeah, that does sound dope. But yeah, so I am a FlyQuest fan, and I do like what they're doing as an organization in general. At least with when they first came in, I wasn't definitely bought, but I think new management when they came in, they're doing a good job in my opinion in like the marketing side.
They've done a lot to push the org forward in terms of name brand, and that is actually something. I don't know what episode it was. It was one of the very first episodes of Hotline League, I think last year when Papa Smithy joined, and I said that the org was on its path to becoming a home brand or a home name. I'm blanking on the terminology I used at the time, but basically they'd be one of like the TSMs or the Cloud9s or the Team Liquids of esports orgs eventually down the line, and I think they're on that path right now.
I hope so. Again, I haven't necessarily talked to them as much as I've talked to Shopify people. So like I'm more confident in Shopify and Team Liquid, for example, from what I've seen than FlyQuest. But again, like I said, I'm a FlyQuest fan, and I do cheer for them. I was heavily cheering for them during the finals. I will never cheer for FlyQuest when they're playing Shopify. Like that's just who I am.
Fair, respect.
But every other game, I'm always cheering for FlyQuest. So also Numi's really cool. Like I've had a few interactions with him, and she's pretty cool. So yeah, let's talk a bit about the game that we just saw. 100 Thieves got destroyed. They're gonna play against Dignitas in the rematch.
Mhm.
Dignitas lost the game they won, especially that game 5. Like,
Yeah.
my God, that is honestly like I really don't want to just shower those specific two players with a lot of hate. But man, do they deserve some hate after, or like some flame for some of the plays that they made? Like that Kennen, the Bard alt. Like I'll just tell you from my perspective, and I have a clip that's going on TikTok of just me talking about like casting what happened.
That scene or that fight, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I could see the Bard alt, and I was like, oh my God, Kennen. All he has to do is like he doesn't even need to flash alt anymore because he can just go around and alt them. Like he doesn't even need to use his flash, and then he can save his flash. And he flashes. I'm like, why'd you flash? Just go around. Please don't alt. Like it's happening in my mind. And then he alt. I'm like, is this guy paid? Like, did someone pay him? And then like I didn't say that aloud, obviously, but it was so disastrous. And I talked to Licorice. The interview went out earlier today, and I was like, "What did you feel when that moment happened?" He was like, he just like went, "Oh man, oh." When that happened, man, I was so relieved. Like I was just like, "Oh my god, we can actually win this game!" Like I don't know what he was trying to do, but I didn't even have my screen on my champion like 100%. I got Bard ulted, and I was like, "Oh my god, we're gonna lose!" And then he does that, and I'm like, "Okay, I guess we win." So yeah, even the people in the game were very confused, and that doesn't inspire confidence in Dignitas, considering they almost lost to a team that did all of that. Having said
Yeah.
that, who do you have? 100 Thieves or Dignitas in the rematch?
I I you have to think about it from the perspective of how demoralized does 100 Thieves feel after this loss to TL? Because
Yeah,
let's be
exactly.
honest, they got battered pretty badly. It was a rough best of 5. Quick 3-0 across the board. But then you also look at Dignitas and their 3 wins were a little sketchy. They're not reliable, and you just there's no confidence there. And it seems
Game
like
one wasn't sketchy. Game one was like a
no,
stomp.
true, true. True. Game 1 was a stomp, but then you had the immediate stomp return from NRG right afterwards, right? And then that's where the series got interesting. So, with that said, I still got I got to take 100 Thieves. I think in general they're playing better. I do think that the overall vibes of that team feels a little better. They feel a little happier, a little just kind of more loose. I think Dig in general has some big name people who have high pressure on their shoulders and expectations that they have to fulfill. And I do not really see a reason for, after this whole split, right, of just nonstop crapping on Dig and how their scrims are going, how some of their wins have been on stage, and especially their losses on stage. I mean, they got 2-0 by Shopify, which I'm sure you loved, but I mean, let's be honest, like the favorites going into that match were Dignitas. And so stuff like that, like for them, when they feel like they're the favorites and they're losing 2-0, and then they're constantly getting stomped in scrims at all the time, and people behind the scenes are talking about how bad they are in scrims. I can't imagine the confidence being that high. And then you come off of this match versus NRG where you scrape through by a miracle because the other team messed up. You're not going into this match with confidence. And I don't think any amount of demoralization from a TL 3-0, who's the best team in the league currently, like you get out of a tournament, you play someone like I was a tennis player. Like
Oh,
I ran
nice.
into I ran into the first seed back in my varsity senior year of high school. Like first seed in the state, by the way. This kid was like the number 1 in Texas. And I got rolled 06-06. That's just how it was. But the thing is, I walk away from the match going like, what, it was the number 1 guy in the state. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I didn't feel bad. And I went in my next match and I won 6-3, 6-2. Not an issue. That's just how it goes. And so for 100 Thieves, I think it's the same thing. Like, you got rolled by the best team in the league, whatever. Now you're playing against a team that scraped through by pure luck, that you've had their number the whole year, and you already beaten them once. What's there to worry about? I feel great if I'm 100 Thieves going into this matchup, personally. I'm not saying you should start planning for quote-unquote FlyQuest, but you should probably almost start planning for FlyQuest. I think you're going to need a lot of prep work for them.
I will say, for anyone who's ever played tennis, it is so much harder than you think. I played tennis my last semester of college. A couple of guys I knew would just like were part of the tennis club, and they convinced me to join, and I joined. And my God, just serving is so easy, and then like everything else is so hard. You know, you could just it was a lot harder than I expected it to be.
Oh yeah.
So I have a lot of
There's
respect
a
for
lot of
people.
intricacies.
Yeah, like at first, just the way you hold the racket and like it was just so much. It was a lot of fun, especially in the beginning. Every time you're playing, you're learning stuff, and there were like we were the beginner group, and then there was like an intermediate group, and I just watched them just like go back and forth and back and forth. I'm like, man, for us, we go back, okay, back, okay, back, point, back, point. Like there's no fourth. It's just like, yeah, it was so cool to see. And yeah, so tennis is. I have a lot of respect for people who play tennis. So you must have loved it when Sharks was on FlyQuest.
So the two times that we had Sharks on, both times I had to have Sandy and Curly, who are my two co-hosts for the show. I had to have them tell me to stop talking about tennis so we could move on with the show. Because for those of you who don't know, Sharks was a semi-professional at one point in tennis, and he actually played in tournaments to try and qualify for majors. Unfortunately, then I don't think, if I recall correctly, he made it past like more than the second or third round of qualifiers. But if you're still playing at that level, you're still one of the best in the world. He was extremely good at tennis, so I loved picking his brain on tennis and tennis strategy and things he did for training and whatnot. And he's a very valuable resource if you actually want to pick up tennis. Not that a lot of people are going to have access to that resource, but if you ever have the chance to talk to him, he does love talking about tennis.
Yeah, it's. I always respect people who actually played. Like I know it's not a team sport, but when you play sport and then you come coach, I think you have a better mentality because you've been coached. He was also older, so there. I really like Sharks. I'm sad that we don't see him in the LCS anymore. But
Yeah.
speaking of Dig versus 100 Thieves, Dignitas, like game one kind of inspires you with a little bit of faith. Like if they could just replicate that game plan where they're doing things. Like a big problem that happened with the first match between Dig and 100 Thieves was that 100 Thieves were doing things and Dig was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you wanted the grubs? Here you go. Would you like one of our support or like a death as consolation for us like showing our faces to you without permission?" Like they were just like rolling over and dying with like very politely. And there was no fight in them. We saw some fight. They're veterans, right? Who at what Sven said was like, we have to click at some point, right? Like once we click, we'll play well, but like we just haven't clicked yet. Like it has to happen, right? And so there's so many reasons to make you believe. Like Sniper got exposed, and again, Team Liquid are a very good team. But if I'm Dignitas and I'm watching what happened, I'm like, oh wait a second, when their rookie top laner, who they generally like to, facilitate and give him his comfort picks and give him resources in draft, is like set behind, the game becomes very difficult. Because even when their mid laners ahead, even when their bot laners ahead, even when they're playing the scaling champion who hit his 225 stacks, the Smolder, who's like, mega OP, like if their front line is just like falling and collapsing, as long as we ban the Vi, like you saw, they were banning like Team Liquid, ban Vi, pick Sejuani, just like take that strategy. You've seen a strategy that works, take it, emulate it. You're gonna do it so much worse. But the key thing is like your top laner, Licorice, needs to have a good game. Because what we saw happen to Licorice against who are they playing where he lost like the Cassante matchup? He lost like Cassante versus Renekton on like both sides. Like he played a very bad series against.
I'll be honest, I haven't watched every Dig series, so I'm not sure who it was, but I remember reading about it in one of the post match threads. It's like, how do you lose the mirror matchup on both sides of it?
Yeah, so like as long as he doesn't do that, which he didn't do it against NRG, but again, it is Dokla, so just take the game plan. What I'm worried for with 100 Thieves is that there's a game plan of how to shut down this team. Don't forget the macro, forget everything. Just copy those bans. Make sure River is not playing. Make sure Ayla has to be the one to engage, right? Make sure River is not the one on the Vi, the Sejuani. Let their mid laner pick Smolder because for some reason they have a lot of like they really want to give him Smolder, even though you can play AP. Like I don't know, ban the Senna. Don't let Senna go through. Don't be NRG. Like don't give them Senna, and just dive top, lane swap on him. We saw Dig had actually quite good lane swaps, So like just put that pressure on the rookie top laner and have faith in your veteran. And I think they have an opportunity to actually like win this. having said all that, if I had to pick a team, I will always go against Dignitas. So I will say 100 Thieves, 3-0.
The 3-0. Sheesh. Okay. I don't think it'll be a 3-0. But I do still have faith in 100 Thieves to close it out because I just, for all the reasons that I stated earlier, I was probably leaning more towards a 3-1. The hands diff for the veterans, like at some point it has to show up. I don't think this team has a lick of macro or strategy in them. Unfortunately, like I know Sven keeps saying it has to happen eventually. I don't think you have the coaching staff or the support staff to help you get to that point. Sorry, buddy, it's not happening. Talk to Bakery next time you're joining the team and tell him to get some better coaching staff. With that said, I think there's enough hands diff that at least one of the series, or at least early game, you absolutely can go do a proper rotation with the jungle and mid and go top side and absolutely just end Sniper's game, and you can roll off of that. But I think in general, like you were saying, I think as long as Ayla's doing proper engages and Quid is able to just either the smolder or whatever it may be, he's just able to farm up and get ready. I'm not worried about 100 Thieves like closing out the series.
I agree. I think 100 Thieves are clearly the fourth best team. I think Dig
Yeah.
is like a level. Dig and NRG are a tier below 100 Thieves, or a tier below the top three. And I think the top three are sort of in the same tier. Where like they're like from left to right, Team Liquid. In my opinion, it's FlyQuest, but you could argue FlyQuest and Cloud9, and then you have like
Right.
the B tier. Like if that's the A tier, the B tier is 100 Thieves, and then you have the C tier or D tier for Dig and NRG. The reason I'm picking against Dig like 3-0 is not because I think it'll be a 3-0, but because I have problems with Dig the organization, not the players. I love the players. Like every time I talk to them,
Don't we all?
every time I talk to them, like, man, Sven, I've been following you since you were OG Neils back in like 2015, making it to EULCS. I was like excited to see this Origin because they had Expecke. I didn't know anything about you. Like same thing with Licorice. I'm like, man, I still hate you for picking that Hecarim in 2018, like qualifiers and beating us. And like all these players, Spica, like I remember when they gave you your start, and I was like, well, why are you bringing in Spica? Can we just have our, at that point, what's his name? Acadian had like a very good split and then a bad split, and then they brought Grig, and like I followed a lot of these players since the moment they entered the league,
Right.
and I'm a fan of them. And I made fun of Jensen for years and years for getting Jensen in that Echo game 5 against TSM, and losing the game there. So like these are players that I have emotional attachment to. Like I don't hate any of these players. I want to see them succeed, but the organization, like I just I don't like what they did. And so yeah, that's why you'll find me like often telling NRG like I hope you beat Dignitas, or not because I hate the players, but again because same reason why I was very excited for Immortals when they like last split and this split. I'm like, I hope they lose every single game. I know they beat us, but we still finished on top of them. So I mean that's hard. They had the head to head and still lost. So
we take those.
we take those. Yeah. Like I love Tactical. I've known about Tactical before he even entered like Academy. When he joined TSM Academy, like I knew the person. So Tactical used to play on a amateur team, and that person who owned the amateur team was like someone that I knew. And so like I had an emotional attachment to Tactical, and I always wanted to see him succeed. He joined TSM Academy. I was so happy for him. He went to Team Liquid and made it to World. Like he looked great. So all these players, like I want to see them succeed, but maybe not the organization.
No, my big thing with Dig has always been that, and this is post franchising, right? And
Yeah,
because like they
No,
got
old
relegated.
Dig was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing about this organization currently is I feel like off season hits and it's just like, okay, let's maybe try this. And they had that all North American roster. And it's like, sure, you're not winning every match, but like you have such a huge fandom behind you. And then they end up making roster swaps and the team ends up failing after like a
They bring
decent
in
spring split.
Blue, and yeah.
Yeah, and they start picking up random people, and it feels to me like there's always just this desperateness to Dig that they just, oh, we have to get a win in, we have to finish well, we have to make it to Worlds this time, and so they make these swaps, and it's like, oh, this is our magic fix, and it's never the magic fix because it's their failure to consider the whole roster as a whole, or thinking the player is that good that they can just fix the team and its issues, or in this case, this past split of just doing a full Bud Light quadra kill on most of your team and just picking up everyone that you can that's like I literally call this the reject team because everyone on this team has been rejected from their primary teams. You had Licorice, who was rejected from like Cloud9, and granted, unfairly kicked from Golden Guardians due to what happened to the Golden Guardians. You had Spica, who was rejected from FlyQuest. You had Jensen, who was rejected from FlyQuest. You had Sven, who was rejected from Cloud9. Like,
And Shopify.
it's the reject team and Shopify, but I mean, it's a reject team. Like, at this point, it's like, yes, these players are good. They've made a name for themselves. There's a reason they made a name for themselves, but maybe there's also a reason that they're not playing on those teams. You ever think about that? Why are you picking up the scraps? Why are you picking up the sloppy seconds? Like, just stick with the first team that you had in spring. They were doing okay. I really love the concept of you developing XU because I think he can be a great jungler later on. Why are you dumping him after a split? Why are you leading him along this whole time? And Tomo, I love Tomo. Again, guess where he came from? Yeah, so it's like all these developing things. It's like, yeah, I don't expect you to win. That's fine. But there's something about Dig that over the past few years, it's like they have to get wins in. And so they scrap everything split to split. Where it's just like, if you took the time to develop these players, I actually think you could make a good team like a year or two down the line. But unfortunately, the reality of esports economy and the system that we're in, you have to have wins now. But the thing is, like, you've been trying this for 5 years. What's another year or two? Are you going to go under in the next year or two? I highly doubt it. Just take the L for the next 2 years or so until you develop the team that you want. And then you have a fandom behind you because you actually develop talent. They're NA players, so people are going to want to cheer for you. People are going to want to cheer for your team. They're going to want to buy your merch and so on and so forth. And you continue to build your org to actually be a pleasant team that people want to cheer for instead of constantly just scrapping everything that you do every single split and then constantly tarnishing your own reputation. Sorry, Dig drives me up the wall sometimes, and that's a little bit where this rant is coming from.
But Nox, as long as we win, that solves everything.
You don't freaking win! You don't win! When's the last time you won? Literally
They've never made it to finals. They've never made LCS finals.
Yeah, not even LCS finals. They made it in season 2 before LCS was even a thing. Congrats, and then you got 0-3 back in Worlds. You lost to Saigon Jokers before Vietnam was even a respectable region. Like, what are you doing? And I say that with love because I love that Dig squad back then. Like, I love you, Scar. I love you, I'm a Cutie Pie, Kiwi Kid, all those Crumb. Yeah, all those guys. They're great. But like, what are you doing? You like, okay, sorry. Anyway,
they didn't build off of winning. That's the thing. They built off of the names, the brands that they had. And then they were like, oh, well, let's try winning. And they've tried winning over and over and over again. And you know, if when they brought in Someday, like, people forget, but who brought in Someday? It wasn't 100 Thieves. It was Dignitas. Like, if Dig had just like, when they came into franchising, like let's just say after they bought Clutch, so 2021, if they just came back in and said, hey, we don't care about winning. Like, obviously, we want good teams, good players. We're going to put a coaching staff and develop a process, right? Because that was their thing. Trust the process. Like, oh, look at all these like metrics that we're using, the Clutch used to somehow reverse sweep. Yeah. Anyways, that was in 2019. I'm sorry. So I'm confusing years, but regardless, yeah, they came into 2020. And if you just like built a fan base and let the LCS thing do their own thing, but then you as an organization need to market and need to just develop fandom. And they did that. They have a mascot. Like, you know how much cool stuff you can do with a mascot? In 2024, FlyQuest are like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Let's do it. Like, you had a mascot from way back then. You could have done so many cool. You could have done animated stuff. You could have had a weekly recap with, I don't even remember what they call their mascot anymore. That's how relevant that they are. Like, when I was at FanFest last year for summer finals, I took they wanted the line. I think Santorin and Jensen were there.
Santorin and Jensen, yeah.
And then they wanted to take pictures with like the Dig like whatever mascot, and I was like,
Digi. They call it Digi.
Yeah, I was like, not really, no thank you. And I took a picture, and they're like, you want your... They had Polaroids that they were printing out. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, what does this picture mean to me? Nothing. You know, you could have developed so many different things. Like, you brought in Sylvex, and a lot of love to Sylvex. I think there's a difference between League of Legends and a League of Legends organization, and I feel like he's doing it from the perspective of a League of Legends fan. I'd love to talk to him about it and just like pick his brain. But again, at least they're trying, right? They brought in, in my estimation, they're not actually trying to make worlds. They just brought people who have bigger brands because they want to be more popular. And guess what? They are. Now people hate them, but again, they are more popular. So I hate them or love them. I think like at least that part was a success. But at the end of the day, like if you had started from the very beginning when you came in, like 4 years ago, and invested in just like building fandoms, holding events, like, just being on social media. TikTok was exploding when you guys came in, and you were nowhere to be found. You're still nowhere to be found. Like it, a lot of times what they're doing is too little, too late because they're like, oh, when we win, everyone's going to be our fans. Like that is the dumbest thing. Only one person gets to win. Like the amount of organizations that have won in 2020, right? If we look back at 2020, there were only 4 organizations that had won LCS. Team Liquid, obviously with their four-peat, Cloud9, CLG, TSM. There were only 4 teams, and it wasn't until NRG, not NRG,
100
EG.
Thieves.
No.
Oh, yeah, yeah, EG was first. Was EG first or 100 Thieves
I think 100 was first. 100 was first, and then EG won the split after.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until 100 Thieves in 2021 that changed, because Cloud9 won the spring, and then 100 won summer. So like, if you just look at it statistically, there were like what 10 different splits and across 4 winners, probably more, like 12 different wins across splits across 4 winners. Like the likelihood that you've never even made it to finals. Like, come on, what are you doing? Just build a team. If everyone's strategy is like we're gonna win and that's how we're gonna build fans, no one's gonna get fans. Because guess what?
Yeah.
Last split, Team Liquid. The split before NRG. The split before C9. Like, you can't base your whole. Anyways, I want to know on too.
Dig elicits something out of us. Apparently, our inner haters come out. It's quite special. You're great at that, Dig. Congrats.
IMT too. I will say. I'm really hoping IMT are out. I would love for
we'll save that for another day, though. Otherwise, you and I are going to be here for another 30 minutes.
Yeah. Last topic. Since we are talking about Dignitas, you had 2 players to rebuild this entire roster around. Which 2 players do you rebuild?
Oh, okay. So we're back to the NRG question, except for Dignitas.
Yeah.
So I think there's a standard that Zven brings to any team, and that comes in terms of like actual team morale, in terms of strategy, and in terms of just like on the Rift play. And so for that reason, I think Zven is like one that you really should, like, in this going into this offseason, you should do a lot to try and convince Zven to like stay. Build the team around Zven. And I think Zven's going to provide a lot of opportunities to either whether it be connections from certain players, because he's just that well respected, as well as just being the rock that you need. Because I think even in like this split, Dig has shown signs of life a lot of the times via Zven. I think he's just what the team needs to be able to actually punch higher than what anyone else on the team has been able to show. So Zven is my first one. I like Isles. This is where it gets really hard. I like Isles. I thought he had a lot of potential that he was showing in spring. I personally had him 3rd All-Pro last spring. I thought he was a great support with Tomo. But I don't know if the level of synergy has been the same, or if it's just like the team itself is looking worse, so he looks worse. I'm not really sure. So I'm talking out loud, by the way. Yeah, and meta a little bit too, for sure. And if you can't tell, I'm thinking out loud a little bit here. So there's Isles. I'll revisit him. You have Jensen. For those of you who do not know me, I have been a renowned Jensen hater. I have not ever really cared for Jensen. I thought he's been kind of washed ever since even 2018 when he made semifinals at Worlds. I don't think he was ever able to replicate this level of success that he's shown since then. And I think because he has a high floor. I will always admit he has a high floor. But I think he's sat at his floor a lot more often than he sat at his ceiling. And so I've never been a big fan of Jensen, and I think he's just someone, if you want a stable team, sure, you can pick him up, he'll do his job, so on and so forth. But I've never really been a big fan of him, so I'm going to say Jensen can go. Sorry, I know you were on FlyQuest and you had one of your best splits that you've ever had on FlyQuest. I think that's partially due to the fact that the rest of the team was able to support, and he was able to pop off in that aspect. So there's that. Spica, I don't know, man. He has not looked it at all. Like, I don't think the level of play he's been displaying for this team, and part of it may be just like he doesn't get along. He doesn't work well with Jensen. He may not work well with Licorice. I don't know if it's just synergy issues or what, but his jungling has not really been what it should have been since 2023 spring split FlyQuest. I thought he had a great spring back then, and then he's obviously had some great times on TSM, but it's just not been the same, man. And so for that reason, I think Spica's probably also got to go. And then last but not least, you got Licorice. I think Licorice has actually been okay for this team. I don't think he's had the same level of highs that he had on Golden Guardians this past year. But if he can get back to that point, I don't think he's looked awful, but I don't think he's like been great either. And in terms of top lane, I think you could always, like, when you're actually building a roster, I think there's usually top laners that you could import from somewhere, or I mean, Surdy's on the market if you really want to take a dedevelopment split. Dig. You're gonna take a development split, Dig? No? Okay.
Sure.
Well, anyway.
It'll be a split, yes. Before getting the roster.
Yeah, so I think it would be okay to keep Licorice. So I think I got my answer. I think for sure you keep Sven, and I think you keep Licorice. I think Isles is something you can really consider, because I know Sven and him get along pretty well because they used to be on Cloud9 together. But at higher priority, I think I would take Licorice over Isles, because I think there are other supports that you can maybe pick up somewhere on the lot you could import. Someone that Sven actually wants to play with, you can get a European support that he thinks he can work well with or something. But I think in terms of top laner options, because Dig is so unreliable and they want these big name brands, I think Licorice is the one that you want to keep. So Sven and Licorice are probably my two answers, with like an honorable mention to Isles, because I think he actually is okay. I just don't know how well the synergy's been.
So I'll put it this way. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're keeping Sven, and Sven is like the best performing member of this team, Sven is not like an in-game leader. He's an out-of-game leader. Like we from what I've heard behind the scenes is that in like the scrim room, he's very loud with his opinions. He knows how to push the game forward. He knows what he wants, but in the game, he doesn't talk that way, right? Because he has to focus on all these micro little details. It's very hard to shot call from the AD carry role, unless you're Ruler or apparently Tomo, because apparently Tomo does the same thing. And part of the reason the 100 Thieves were good. So, anyways, yeah, it's if you're keeping Sven, I would keep Isles with him. The reason is not because I dislike Licorice, but I think if you want Licorice, I'd rather have sort of the what do you call it? The outline, the master plan of what EG did, or what FlyQuest did as well, where you have a very stable top laner, you have a leader jungler, and then you have your mid and AD carry be rookies who are mechanically adept and still need to learn the game, and then you have a stable support. But if I'm going with someone who's already a stable AD carry, who's not this mechanically, like, who's not a Masu, who's not a Danny, who's not a Berserker, like if I'm not doing that, then I don't necessarily want a stable top. Maybe I would rather have a Surdy. I would rather have like the more young, aggressive, like people who are showing that they have the mechanics, but maybe not necessarily the macro, and then have my bottom lane and my mid laner be the stable factors, and them being the ones to reel them in. And so it really depends on where you want to play. Do you want to play for your solo lanes, or do you want to play for mid AD carry? And I think if you have Sven, you need to play away from him. You need to give the resources to your top laner and to your mid laner. And so you can't keep Licorice, because again, Licorice is a weak side top laner. He's not a carry. Right? He doesn't play, like, sure, he plays the Rumble and he plays the Jax, but at the end of the day, he's not a bin, right? He gets the Cassante matchup and he loses it, and then he gets the Rakton side of the matchup and he loses. Like, that's not who you want to put all your eggs in the basket. I'd rather put that into someone's like Surdy, right? And then I'd rather get like a jungler who's also aggressive and more of a stable mid laner, or a leader jungler if I could, and then have like, my rookies in mid top if I'm keeping Sven. If I'm not keeping Sven, then I'd probably keep Licorice and Isles. But since I did say I'm keeping Sven, I'm keeping Isles with him.
Hey, I think the agreement we have here for sure is Spica and Jensen are
you
not
cannot keep Spica. He's not a leader. Like, you can't be playing for as long as you have. You can't be the MVP of the league and not lead in the mid to like. It's just, that's one of the things I'm very harsh with. If you are a leader, then you get to sit. Like, you are so valuable. Look at how valuable Inspired is. Look at how great Umti looks, right? But if you're not a leader, I'm sorry, like, you've had the years, you don't have the mechanics anymore, right? There are people who like look more mechanically adept, like a Shaden. Like, you can bring in different junglers, and I just, if you're not a leader and you're not like crazy mechanics, you're not like a Bo, then what's the point?
Yep, I think I'm pretty much on the exact same page as you on that one.
And then Jensen had a phenomenal split on FlyQuest, and then just like a horrendous split on Dig. So I don't know if it's meta, but like we saw him on Ori and he wasn't like, yeah, I guess he hasn't played it for a while. I don't know. I think Jensen has earned with his last split at least a year. Just like I thought on 2023, Palafox earned himself a year. The year's over. I don't think he earned himself any more time. I think Jensen earned himself one more split. Would I give it to him personally on Dig? No. I wouldn't
No,
rebuild around
not
him.
on Dig.
Yeah, not
Not
on Dig.
Dig.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he's still in the LCS. Actually, now that I'm looking at the teams, I'd be surprised if he was still in the LCS. We'll see. I think it's time for
I don't
Spirax
know
to get a team.
because you start getting wonky about it because it's like, okay, well, 2 teams are leaving, but then you have an LLA team coming in, you have an NACL team coming in. Like, are those teams going to want to keep like the regional players from LLA, or is the NACL team going to be bold and say, well, we're going to keep some of our NACL players? The answer is probably not, but you never know.
They have to.
Is that confirmed?
Almost. They haven't like specifically said exactly what it is because I think they haven't actually like finalized the terms. But from my understanding, the idea is to keep 3 out of 5 of the players.
Wow.
Yeah, so the spot
interesting.
So it can be flipped.
Because theoretically, let's just say the most popular option is DSG, right? Disguised Toast, his
or
team.
Sentinels. You give Sentinels a team.
I guess that's true, and then it gets interesting because they can just pick up whoever they want at that point because they're not a team that's from the NACL. I will say that would be a pretty feels bad moment for all the NACL teams, though. That'd be kind of like a big middle finger to them because it's like, okay, we've been trying to prove ourselves in terms of branding and so on and so forth, and you pick a team that's not even in your league.
Riot has given them the middle finger, has given LCS teams the middle finger over and over and over again. So
yeah, true. I'm not denying that. I just that would be pretty disrespectful is all I will say. You're not wrong. We've done it historically, but I hope they don't. But yeah, whether it be for the sake of my example though, let's say Disguised. If I'm Toast, there's no way in hell that I want to bring 3 out of 5 of my players from his current roster into the LCS. They will Tenacity.
Get rolled. You're keeping Young. You're not keeping Tenacity?
I'm not keeping Tenacity, man. I don't think he's
brand power. Forget player. Like he has so much brand behind him.
I guess if you want brand, sure, but like if you actually want to be competitive because remember you're a guest slot. If you don't finish above like 6, you're immediately going back down to NACL. You have got to upgrade your firepower.
You're always leaving and you're always going back.
I thought it was a promo. No, it's promo relegation. You will always fight the number 1 team from NACL. You will have a best of 5.
Oh, you will always have a best of 5. Oh, I thought you
always have a best of 5.
I thought you will always get promoted, and the bottom team.
It's not Valorant.
Oh no,
it's its own separate thing.
I thought that's how it worked. Maybe I'm wrong.
Valorant, you get the year and you're immediately back down.
That's my understanding.
This is a system where you play a best of 5 at the end of the year, regardless of where you finish, by the way. So if the guest team makes Worlds, they're still playing a best of 5 for relegation at the end of the year, which is why I absolutely hate this system. No, because I remember ranting about this because I hate this system because it's so dumb. Because any team that gets promoted is automatically probably going to dump most of their NACL players and pick up imports and other LCS players, which means that whenever they do play this best of 5, they can. That's how it reads in the. I'm pretty sure. I will look it up. Like I'll try and pull it up right now.
So Mark Z was on the dive after the announcement. And he said, like, we want to protect those players. We don't, exactly the case that you just said, we don't want it to happen where this team gets promoted into the LCS and gets rid of the players that got the win in NACL. And from my understanding, he brought up the hypothetical that you said, like, if this team goes to Worlds, we already know that they're going back to NACL. He didn't mention a best of 5. So I'm not entirely sure. Like, I was 100% confident that there was no best of 5 until you mentioned it. Now I'm doubting myself, but...
I'm trying to find this article because I remember reading it and I had a whole rant with Curly and Sandy about the fact that because theoretically, like I'm sure Riot wants to put protections in for the players, but I don't think they're going to because again, it's Riot and I don't trust them to actually handle this properly. But in this case, in this instance, like players are going to get replaced because the orgs are going to want to find success, so they're going to hire LCS players and imports. And so what happens is at the end of the year, regardless of how they finish, they're going to go back into this relegation matchup, and then the team from NACL with NACL level players is going to have to fight players that are like import and LCS caliber. It's not a fair matchup. It's not helping cycle players in and out, which is what the whole path to pro is supposed to be. It's literally just like, hey, can you beat these LCS and imports, which is not the same level of standard that you should be fighting for. So if Riot actually takes the time, which I don't recall reading anywhere in any of these articles, that there's going to be protections for these players that come in, then like cool. But I don't recall reading anything about protection.
They haven't written it out yet. They're still like trying to figure out how to do it, because another thing that's like actually one of the things that Mark Z was saying, and you should go back to the dive. Like I think it was whenever they announced the article, he went on the dive, and one of the topics was like, you're bringing in NACL players and they have to face against LCS players, and like there's the amount of resources LCS teams get is like very different, and so obviously you want to upgrade because you want to be competitive, but at the same time we don't want to say, hey, we want to put in those protections. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. They haven't done it yet, because another thing he was saying, like, let's say the players are bad or the players are like being held hostage because you have to keep 5 players, but let's say the players don't want to play with each other anymore. Let's say they win an NACL and they're like, man, I hated playing with Shaden. Shaden was like, I'm just like random name because like they're doing really well, example, right? Yeah. Or let's just say MU players who are doing really well. Like, let's say they hate each other, right? And they don't want to play with each other. And all of a sudden the team is like, well, we can't let you go. We have to have. So like, there's that balance of like, how do we, like, if the players want to leave, like let's say MU players are all phenomenal and Shopify wants to pick them up, and then MU is like, well, we can't, even though we want to sell our players, we want them to go. Like 3 of them, we were contractually obligated to keep 2, and now all of a sudden you're like screwing over 1 player. So there were a lot of these different scenarios that he was bringing up, where it's like it might not be so intuitive to be like, the teams are the players are the ones that own the spot, not the or like. Yeah, so I from my understanding was that they haven't written anything down in stone. They're still trying to figure out different scenarios and what they're going to write. But that was the episode that he went on the dive and he talked about it. I would hope that having people like Mark Z work on this. I don't know how much. Like again, Mark Z is a commissioner of the people, not the teams, in my opinion, because he's focused more on the marketing and whatnot.
Right.
So yeah, I think Carlos is probably more of a commissioner than he is his boss. But regardless, I do think that they're thinking about it. We'll have to wait and see, like you said, whether they're actually going to put those protections in and whether there's going to be a best of 5. I don't know. I'd have to. I'm fairly certain. I watched the video. I read what they said, and I listened to the podcast, and I don't recall ever hearing anything about a best of 5 having to be played.
Granted, I don't think it was ever strictly listed as best of 5, but it was implied in the writing of the article that there was supposed to be some form of match between the top performing NACL team and the guest slot team, because that was what was supposed to help indicate like whether you were, because if it was basically meant like a reason to actually stay in the league and say, hey, yeah, I've earned my spot even though I didn't perform well or whatever it may be, but like you had the opportunity to fight for your spot every single time.
I don't think they gave them it. I think that's part of the reason they were like, we're gonna have a new team every year, because that's one of the things that I heard. Anyway, I'll look back and try to like clarify.
Yeah, maybe I'll look for it too. If I find the article, because I'm still searching for it even now, and if I find it, I'll link it to you.
All right, yeah, that's interesting. That changes a lot if you actually can fight for your spot. That changes a lot. Because that gives motivation to teams to bring in imports, like more motivation. Whereas initially, like if you're leaving at the end of the year, your main thing isn't winning; it's branding, right? You want a brand because when you go back to NACL, your funding is going to be very different, and so you want to be able to get those sponsors. You want to be able to get the best players so you can make it back and keep increasing the valuation of your team, having investors. Like there's a lot of like a business side that goes in when you know that you're like leaving every single year. Whereas if you can keep your spot, that changes the business, that changes the model of the business completely, right?
Right. America will have a different format each split. America. Yeah, I'm just trying to find it at this point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
MSI. Yeah, okay. All right, well, if I find it, I'll let you know.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I think we're at time. We spent like almost an hour and 30 minutes, but it was a lot of fun having you and discussing certain things. Going on rants. Yeah, always fun.
No, I had a good time. It's kind of funny because normally when I do my show with Curly and Sandy, it's more like it's hard with 3 people, especially when you're not in person. So a lot of the times, like, we'll just kind of give our opinions, and it's hard to like banter a little bit. I will say in a one-on-one situation with us, especially for someone who is more attuned to a different LCS team than me, it's kind of interesting to actually be able to banter and kind of go back and forth and like actually flesh like discussions out a little bit. So this has actually been fun. I like doing this.
Yeah, that's the idea of the show. The idea of like it's called disputing everything for a reason. It's like we're just gonna dispute things, you know. And I think we don't have much of that. Most of the times, it's like you're going one team. You talk like the most we have is like on a podcast. You know, I will dominate. Might say, hey, I think Cloud9 is gonna win, and then Monty will say like, I think FlyQuest are gonna win. And it's not like a back and forth. Sometimes it is, but very rarely is it like a debate. You know. And I think the idea of this like I pick specific things. I actually picked the FlyQuest versus C9, and I expected you to say FlyQuest, and I saw you come in with their jersey, and I was like, all right, I got my arguments ready for C9. You know, even though I don't believe in it, but like I got my arguments ready for C9.
Surprise! You actually got to argue for him this time.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it.
There's a running joke on our show that I'm like actually the hater, or I'm always like the devil on the shoulder because I'm always the guy that kind of picks against them. I always operate under the concept of like if I cheer against my team, then when they win, I'm happily surprised. Or if they lose, then I'm correct. It's a win-win scenario. I can't lose here. So I'm always known as that guy.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I'll definitely make sure to link all your stuff in the description of this VOD. It should go up tomorrow. Yeah, any shout outs you have, any things you got going on that you want to shout out?
Shout out to my 2 hosts, Sandy and Curly QQ. They're my 2 hosts, my co-hosts rather, for my show. We are the Flight Check Crew. We are a FlyQuest based podcast. We cover mainly League of Legends for FlyQuest, but on slower weeks or where things aren't happening in League, we do cover other aspects and other games of the organization. Go jump in the FlyQuest Discord if you're interested at all in FlyQuest Pick'ems. It is Pick'ems for the entirety of the LCS, and I also do Worlds. I do give out jerseys. I do give out prizes. So if you win, we will for free ship you jerseys and other merch. Outside of that, shout out to you, Cloud. You've been killing it content wise. It's always fun to watch your interviews. You always have a lot of good insight, and I hope you keep working on it.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate your time as well for doing this.
Hey, thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, bye.
All right.
All right, that was fun.
Oh, that was good, man. I had a great time with that. That was great.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking time and doing all this.
Yeah, I probably should go to the party and show my face a little bit. So,
all right, man. Take care.
I'd be down to hang out a little bit longer, but yeah, I've been gone a little longer than I said I would be, so it's all good.
All right, have fun, man.
All right. Have a good night, man. Thanks for having me on.
Bye.
Peace. Later.
Whew, all right, we are done. That was fun. That was actually more fun than I expected, especially the Cloud9 versus C9 segment. Like I was expecting him to be, like I said, on FlyQuest side, and then he wasn't, and I got to argue for FlyQuest, which I wanted to begin with. Normally, I just take whichever opinion the other person doesn't take, because if I wait, if I go first, they might agree with me, even though they're like they're supposed to disagree with me. They might like soft disagree with me, which is something I learned. Which is no shame to them. Like they're not doing this every single week. They don't know how it works. But yeah, sometimes they'll just agree with me, and like I don't want that to happen. So what I've started doing is like I will tell them the list of things that I want to talk about, and often I will add stuff that during the show, like topics that come up that I don't really think about. And whatever they say, I will go second, because if I go first, there's the opportunity of like miscommunication or whatnot. I did agree with him in like a couple of things, because like sometimes, okay, I do want to dispute everything, and I want to give devil's advocate, and then I'm going to still say 100 Thieves are going to win, you know? So that I've been enjoying it. I think it's developing more and more. I think eventually I'll be able to get a co-host who like always here. I think that'll be really fun. I think once we have like good synergy, it'll be really fun. A little bit of a spoiler. I am trying to do something like this for Worlds, maybe a little bit more professional. No promises, but I am trying to make. It'll probably be a daily thing. Like every day after games end, I'll probably be streaming for like 30 to 40 minutes max, just talking about the games. And I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be doing as many interviews because I think Worlds is a little bit harder. So there might be days where like I'm not even getting interviews. There might be days where I get a bunch of interviews. I don't know yet. Worlds is going to be a different beast. I'm also going to be traveling during Worlds, so it might be even more difficult. Like if I don't have good internet connection, like I might not be able to do the interview. Like there's a lot of things that are going on during Worlds. I shouldn't be traveling most of the Worlds, but the first, I think at least planes, I won't be here. So there's a lot going on. I have, like I said, I have some stuff in the behind the scenes working for more stuff like this. As usual, once the spot is up, like just comment and give me feedback because a lot of the feedback that you guys said, I've put it in. Even just like adding names and tags and like more statistics and just different things that you guys suggest, I always take into account because this is one of those shows where it's hard for me to like rewatch the entire thing when I'm so busy. And like these days I'm quite busy, so it's your feedback is what I rely on. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'm thinking I might, yeah, I think I'll call it a night here. Getting a little tired. I was thinking of streaming a little bit more. There's this Portuguese book that I'm reading. Um, Brazilian Portuguese, and I was gonna do some reading practice, and I was thinking of doing it on stream, but I might just do it off stream. I did run out of water, and I am thirsty, so I'm gonna go get some water. I was thinking I should, yeah, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, but that's the end of the stream. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to Nox. I'll put his description, like all the flight check stuff, in the description of the video. And yeah, as usual, let me know what you guys thought. Thank you. Bye, guys.